People are jumping on.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and all the ships at sea. Thank you for joining us on another exciting Page One Power educational webinar. In these shows, we typically explore a single topic relevant to the online search and marketing community, including your questions from the audience. And today is no different. Our topic today is Link Building Live, Part 1 of 3, What Makes a Good Linkable Asset? Please follow us on Twitter at @PageOnePower and follow the global webinar conversation with this webinar's hashtag P1P webinar with the numeral 1. Our very own Linkarati content manager, Andrew Dennis, will be live tweeting today's discussion, which is almost as fun to follow as the discussion itself. But before we dive into it, let's introduce our panel, shall we? I am, as I move to the side here, I am Colin Eggleston, your friendly neighborhood marketing events coordinator here at Page One Power. And joining us today is one of my esteemed colleagues, SEO consultant, Michael Johnson. Michael, how are you today?
Hey, I'm doing great, Colin. Thanks a lot. I said I'm Michael Johnson. I'm an SEO consultant here, and I work with clients. I work with people who are looking to find SEO services to meet their needs.
Excellent. Well, we are very happy that you could be joining us here today, and I'm excited for our discussion because we have a lot to talk about today, and so let's get to it. So, and for the audience too, please feel free to submit your questions throughout the show. We would love to answer them live on the air, and especially since today we're going to be talking about linkable assets, and we want to do a live demo of your sites as you send them in. So please share those with us. We have some great examples as well from the audience members who sent their sites in before the show, and we're happy to look at some on the air as well. So if you want your site to be featured, please let us know. All right, so kind of the inspiration behind this webinar and kind of one of the things that really kind of brought us here today is we, as a company, we are just at the SEJ Summit in Chicago, and our team put together a workshop that workshop for the for the summit, and hats off to Joe Oliver, to Nash Ritchie, and to Amy Merrill for their hard work and pulling that off and kind of putting together a stellar presentation. And it was to kind of compliment ourselves, to kind of pat ourselves on the back. We feel that it was a good experience for the audience. We feel it was a hit, as you would say, and I wanted to, one of the things that got me thinking, I was like, let's expand the reach of that presentation that they did. And so I wanted to do, so I thought about building a 3-part webinar series that will cover that entire workshop and basically make that workshop available to the whole world at large, and and to kind of be able to kind of spread that message, because we felt it was very well received, and we'd like to kind of, we love talking link building anyway. So kind of a little bit of story behind this topic and kind of why we're here today. So the journey of 1,000 links begins with a single question. Do I have anything worth linking to on my website? So section 1, we're going to be talking about linkable assets today, and this is one of my very favorite subjects as a resident trainer here, a new hire trainer here at Page One Power. This is one of the topics that really kind of got people kind of fired up as they realized, kind of the power of good content and good assets on someone's website. So it was a very fun thing to teach and talk about. So during this presentation, we're going to talk a little bit about the aspects of linkable assets. So linkable assets are not a product page, typically. And I know this is a really easy one, and Michael, I think you might have had some experience as well with this, is that this is a really easy one. When I've had discussions with people and we're kind of talking, businesses wanting to do some link building or talking SEO, they say, oh, great, well, can you just point all your links to this page, to my #1 product? And it's our bestseller, and so I just want all your links to go to this page. So you think that will really get people talking? And I have to kind of politely disagree. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's very interesting to me in a lot of my interactions with clients. Every once in a while, you'll get that site that you'll say, okay, so why would somebody link to your website? I think that's the question that people need to ask themselves when determining if they have a linkable asset. You have to ask yourself, why would somebody link to my website? If you can't think of anything on your site that's worth linking to, then you probably don't have a linkable asset, and that's something that needs to be addressed. And typically people don't like linking to just bland category pages or to a home page of a website. Usually it's something that will engage their users or provide value to them.
Absolutely, and I think, one of the things before even putting a link in, if I'm writing an article or if I am maybe thinking of sharing a link with a friend or a business in my niche, what's in it for them? Why would they want to take time out of their day to link back to this? And that question is almost never that's never answered by a product page. Maybe there's a few exceptions, but we typically stay away from product pages. Non-promotional, this is the thing too, is that I think promotional pages, high converting landing pages, bottom of the funnel stuff really has its place. It's very valuable, and it definitely has its place in the SEO and online marketing world, of course, because it's kind of one of the core elements of marketing is having this big promotion, getting people to your site through monetary encouragement, have a really big loss leader or something like that. But that's not a linkable asset. A linkable asset isn't something that's going to be a temporary sale. It's not going to be informing people that there's a weekend sale or something like that. So it's something that's going to be more less ephemeral. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, what I see a lot of when I'm looking through linkable assets is we look at the site and then we say, okay, do they have a blog or do they have a resources section of their site? And then what will happen is you'll click on the blog and you'll see there's tons of content. But all of this content is just like an in-depth guide about their product or an in-depth guide about this. I think one of the key flaws that people have with modern link building in the last year or two now, since the Penguin era has begun, is that people don't realize that when you are getting real links, the only links that are really valuable out there are links that are built by a relationship with another person. And when you're building links, you're working with real human beings. And you have to think about that if someone's going to link to your site, they're going to look at the page that they're linking to. And if you have an article that's just trying to sell somebody something, they'll notice that, they'll pick up on that, and they don't want to feel like they're just giving away free advertising on their site.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that one of our kind of insider kind of trade secrets, I guess you can say, at Page One Power, giving it away over the air, let's do this, is that we love evergreen content. Right, and so we don't like to link to something that's not evergreen. And so when we're evaluating linkable assets, we don't say, oh, great, well, this will be up for 6 months, and then we'll point a bunch of links to it, and then it'll be down, and the page will 404 or go away. And so that's just a waste of everybody's time. And so we specifically really are on the lookout for evergreen content. It's educational and informative. Linkable assets are typically educational and informative. That's not to say boring. That's not to say it's like eating your vegetables or like homeworky. Educational, being educational and being informative can be done in a variety of very creative ways. But it also, think about the act of using a search engine, right? It's fulfilling a query. It's in some ways educating yourself. If I'm looking up, the release dates for the original Star Wars trilogy, or how to darn a sock or something like that and fix a hole in my sock. So both ways I'm being educated. One may be more important than the other, but I'm still being educated. And so, a linkable asset needs to fulfill a searcher's query and do so in a manner that is engaging and is thorough.
Yeah, I agree. I think thinking about everyday questions that people ask and providing answers to those questions, I think that's really useful. As well, again, with stuff that's educational, informative, it kind of goes back to what I just talked about a second ago. Just like imagine that you're a webmaster or a blogger and you spent your whole life building up your site and getting an audience there, and you get to a point where you're able to sell advertising on your site, and then you have someone who wants to write for you. They write their article, and it's just this living, breathing advertisement of an article living on your site. Like, are you going to let somebody advertise on your site for free when other people have to pay? No, you're not going to let that happen. But on the other hand, imagine somebody writes an article for you that's informational, that provides value to the readership of your site, and the links in that article are linking out to these great resources that enhance the experience of the article and let these people delve deeper into those topics. And those are the kinds of assets that you want to have, or assets that would be able to be linked within an article like that, that provide further value to people on the web.
I think that that's exactly right, and I think that another trap, we keep talking about promotional as in like promoting a product or a sale or something like that. Another trap that a lot of bloggers or content, sites with content sections, they fall into is that a lot of the content on there, they'll write these long, exhaustive blog posts, and they're just kind of talking about their day or talking about, how great they are, or like, hey, I just took this great, vacation to Jamaica, and here's some pictures, and the bars there were really cheap, and we got some good deals in food. Okay, great. That's not really educational or informative. That's not really something that people really want to link to that. Like, if I'm someone else's, like maybe if your mom had a site and, she wants to link to your story about your family's Jamaican vacation, maybe you can get a link out of that. But as far as the general public or your audience for your business, that self-promotional stuff is less linkable, if almost unlinkable. Relevant to the client, meaning kind of relevant to the client. So if you're kind of from our perspective, we kind of think of it in kind of client perspectives. I'm link building for a client. I'm link building for another entity. But the client can also be your business and your site. And so a relevant piece would be something that really appeals to your niche. So like, I'm in my spare time, I really like to bake, bake bread and other sort of sundry, delicious things that require you put butter on them when they're done. And one of the things that, for someone from my audience, I go to recipe sites all the time. But one thing that I find myself using constantly is something like a measurement converter. So like some recipes will say, like 5 milliliters of water. It's like, well, 5 milliliters, how many? I just have a teaspoon here. Help me out. And so it's like, and so I have to convert those units back and forth all the time. And so the recipe sites will often have a resource on there besides the recipes themselves that it allows me to convert those units back and forth. And so kind of, even though that's not a recipe, the conversion calculator is not a recipe. It's not a type of food. It's not a food picture. So it's not something that is the normal content that they really put out, but it's very relevant to the audience because it's something that they'll use. I don't know. Have you seen any other kind of examples of this, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, I think the ultimate way to think about it is just think about the challenges that people in your industry face. And again, it might not directly relate to what your website's about, but if you know that these are things they run into, just like you have conversion issues when you're making a thing, even though they do recipes and food, that still makes sense. So think about those kinds of challenges and make resources that can help people solve those. Yeah.
Another great example of this is so kind of talking about relevance to your audience is I wish I could remember the name of this site, but it was a tire manufacturer and seller, and but on the site they had an in-depth, in the resource section, they had a blog article that talks about ways that you can tell that your tire treads are getting too low and maybe dangerous. When it's time to replace your tire safely. And I was just like, that makes so much sense. Like, they don't have to do that. It's probably not going to make them a lot of sales directly. Like, it was just an informational page. It didn't talk about any of their products specifically. It didn't hawk anything. But it was something that they put out there to kind of make sure that when it's time to how to identify a low tread tire and possibly keep your family safe and to get that tire off your vehicle. I just thought that was just a really good thing to do. And you know what? If I had a website, I'd probably link to that. Internal linking. So this is very important because I mean, kind of one of the basic aspects of owning and kind of maintaining a successful website is making sure that you don't have any, or maybe in some circumstances, a few orphan pages, right? And this absolutely goes for linkable assets, because there's a couple benefits here to having your linkable asset linked internally. So one, if you have it linked to maybe more promotional things, your audience might discover you through the linkable asset. So like the tires site, that is a good example, because I may have been Googling for how to know when it's time to change my tire, and then, oh, I see on the corner there that they have some information about buying certain tires for my car. And so then I go, and then I possibly convert from there. And so because a lot of these linkable assets, I think I have a slide about this later, but it's talking about they're more kind of on the top of the funnel, top of the funnel awareness type things. But you want to make sure they are linked internally, because those, even though the content can't be or shouldn't be promotional in and of itself, make it available, make those opportunities to convert available to the audience that's going to the site.
Yeah, I agree a lot. And a lot of the conversations I have, there's a little bit of like a expectancy violation, where typically the history of link building has been something like a formula that sounds somewhat like this. I want page X to rank for keyword I, so I need to build a link back to page X with keyword Y anchor text. And that's how people did it for so long, that then when you jump on a call with somebody, you say, like, no, we're not going to link to product pages, because that's not what people want to link to. People want to link to content, and their question is like, well, how am I going to influence these pages? If this is where I make my money, how am I going to do this? And that all comes through internal linking. And ultimately the way that you need to look at internal linking is, you can't forget that your internal linking structure also sends signals to Google about what you value on your own website. And if you aren't internally linking to pages on your site that are important to you, then that tells Google that you don't value those and you don't care about them. So, if you build the proper internal linking structure in your site using your linkable assets, then you can point links to those to show those assets are important. Also linking your assets to your conversion pages to show those are important. That sends all those signals to Google about that these pages are valuable and they're important parts of your website. It's just like when you give somebody a referral for something, it's like if I refer you a real estate agent and you're like, oh, and you've worked with him, and I'm like, no way, I work with this guy. You're not gonna really buy that referral,
I think that's exactly right. I think it was our CEO, John Ball, just having a conversation with him, and he said some of the most important link building that you can do is on your own site, is making sure that your site has a healthy linking structure, that there's things that are relevant pages are interlinked, and one blog post might refer to an older blog post or a piece of content or an infographic, and you have this kind of secure web of links, and you don't have a lot of silos on your site. And I think that's some of the most important link building you can do, and it's a good place to start. You want to start building links. Connect a couple of your pages on your site and make sure you don't have a lot of silos at all, because that can be an easy one too. It's an easy one to fall into, easy one to fix. Another kind of pro tip here is that, and we kind of hinted at this before, is that assets don't have to be a piece of content. As you can see in this screenshot here for the AAA website, there's no content per se. It's kind of a calculator type thing, but it's there. It's a really good asset for, if I want to budget for my trip, I can kind of get this, enter in a couple pieces of data points, and then see if I'm budgeting correctly for my trip, or kind of where to allocate those funds. So especially now, the summertime, or getting close to summer, this will be used more and more. People taking road trips.
I know when it comes to these kinds of things, make sure that what you're creating is really unique and serves a valuable purpose. I think one example I see a lot of is people will have like a tool on their site of some kind that can just be found anywhere. So you'll talk to a company that has this mortgage calculator, and they're like, we'll just build links back to our mortgage calculator. And it's this really bland, simple one. The problem is every website, not every website, but every website in their niche has a mortgage calculator, and if there's nothing special about it, then it's going to be hard to get someone to want to link to it. I mean, just Google mortgage calculator, and you'll see right away the first result is just a built-in mortgage calculator within Google for you. So keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, Google does. That's the scary thing too, is that they want to be able to answer these queries for you without you ever leaving Google. And so they're getting better and better at that, and especially things like a calculator piece of content. Google's going to start getting into that game, and they're going to do it better, or dare I say better, but they're going to do it really well. And so if your kind of linchpin piece of linkable content is a calculator that's kind of popular around, maybe reconsider that. But maybe think of a calculator that Google will probably never do, or something kind of outside the box in that sense, that you can have uniquely on your site too.
Just find something that makes yours unique. Yeah.
Exactly, which leads us into uniquely valuable. Because Rand Fishkin has a great Whiteboard Friday where he talks about how he's like, unique content needs to die. I believe that's actually the actual title of the Whiteboard Friday. He says unique content has to die, but uniquely valuable content is where it's at, because you can do all this research and do all this competitor analysis and find something that your competitor hasn't done and write that piece of content, and now you have unique content that maybe answers a couple long-term search queries or whatnot, kind of satisfies that user intent, but it's not really uniquely valuable. So one example that he gives, and there's a lot of them out there. One example that he gives is like, okay, solve a problem for your audience in an interesting way. So one of them was like, hey, here's a visual search engine that you can use to find different different types of paintings or different kind of artistic pieces. And so it's basically something that does what Google already kind of does with their image search, but does it better, and it leverages different assets. So making something that's uniquely valuable is really important, and that's a hard question. That's kind of a hard question to answer. But the places where I always start when I'm kind of talking with a potential partner or client is I look at what is their site rank for, and what are their competitors rank for, and I look at those search queries and the questions that their audience is asking, and I'm going to see if those questions are already being answered in a significant way, or who's doing the best job of answering it, or looking for something that has not been answered very well. And find the answer that is uniquely valuable kind of among that data set, and that's a really good place to start to kind of be able to leverage that information to decide your content vector.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'll think of an analogy, and as like a product of the 90s, growing up then, the thing I think about is like boy bands in the 90s. Like when you think of boy bands, you're like immediately it's like Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, because they were uniquely valuable. LFO, they were unique, but were they really valuable? No, and so we forget about them.
That's absolutely absolutely perfect. Yeah, I think that's something that's difficult to kind of to really kind of parse out. But we have some good examples here, and kind of talking about setting the something for your audience, something your audience would really want. Does my audience care about this? Kind of like with the conversion rate calculators for measurements for the bread baking recipe site. That's definitely something that their audience would need, and it answered kind of my problem and my question of, oh my gosh, I don't have a 5 milliliter measurement tube, but here's all I have, and help me out with that. I think that's a really good a really good thing for that audience. One thing that I really like to think of is like, okay, if I sell coffee, and I sell my coffee is where single origin, organic, shade grown, amazing coffee that's probably on the more expensive side, but it's really good. It's really good for the environment, and it's ethically sourced through ethical business practices and whatnot. Not a lot of coffee companies can say that. But what would my audience care about besides just coffee? And so on my site, maybe I will have, maybe I can have something on there that is a resource for, hey, you care about where your coffee comes from. Well, here's a resource list of all the places where you can, you can support ethical companies that maybe don't sell coffee, but maybe they sell other things. So, hey, here's some other companies, a resource list that we list, that these are companies that we vouch for. Here's some, if you don't like this trade of of coffee that may not be ethically produced or something like that, some fair trade practices, well, here's some protests that you can go to, or here's some events that you can sponsor, or hey, just here's a link to to the airport and tickets. Go down there, see what you can do to volunteer. Right? And so those are things that aren't really promoting coffee per se, but it's kind of promoting something that the coffee drinkers audience, the coffee sellers audience would be interested in.
Yeah, another example that I really love is if you look at like Bissell's website, they sell vacuums. That's like what they do, but they offer a lot of pet-specific products, and the owner of the company is very passionate about pets, about dogs, I think especially. And so what they do a lot of humanitarian efforts revolving around dogs. They have lots of information around pet care and things like that on their site. Just because if you're a pet owner, like I own 2 corgis, my house is covered in hair. And I remember when I went shopping for a vacuum, the first thing I said is, I need one that is made for dogs. And it's just interesting now on their site, they have all these pet-related things. And so that opens up a whole new linkable asset, in of itself for them that through their charitable efforts, they could outreach to pet shelters, they could outreach to veterinarians, they could outreach to other animal organizations and show them the great resources that they have on their sites for pet owners. And that could be a whole new opportunity for them to get links that's not just like, oh, we need vacuum related links. Like, no, there's a whole new opportunity because of that folks they have on pets on their site. So yeah, think about what your audience cares about.
Absolutely. You can get linked on, on a lot of animal, websites where people have, resources for animal lovers and things like that. That's a whole new vector besides just people that love vacuums or people that, like people lists of household appliances and things like that. You can open up your site to a lot of valuable links from an audience, audience that cares about your product and what you stand for. And we're talking about top of the marketing funnel. And so this is, a lot of this is really kind of on the awareness stint. But it's also really valuable because a good linkable asset does a lot of things, but it helps introduce your audience to your brand and to your brand identity, and it kind of helps reinforce brand identity signifiers, but it also is useful and is genuinely useful and informative. So it's kind of like all these different things, and it's an opportunity then to leverage that through links on the page to maybe help someone convert to buying something from you, and so I think it's all these things, and it sounds super easy, right? All you have to do is just have it unique and perfect and relevant and awesome. So there you go. Good luck with that. No, but we have some great concrete examples, real world examples here that we want to that we want to explore today, and it's all kind of guiding all that content creation for Linkable Asset is guided by what sites would link to this. I think is a really good important question to ask. So here's our takeaways, just kind of 5 takeaways there on this slide, so you can kind of go through and recap. There's a very kind of important things to think about as you're building your links and you're starting your link building campaign. Now let's get to my favorite part, the live demo here. So I have not the poll question. Let's go ahead and let's just skip off of the presentation here. So I have for you today 4 linkable assets that I thought were quite valuable, and 4 different types of assets here. So this is how to make the perfect hard-boiled eggs. So basically, it's a recipes blog. But people don't necessarily, hard-boiled eggs in and of themselves is a recipe, but it's also a skill that helps you perfect other recipes that involve hard-boiled eggs in some manner. And this is a site that I like to frequent, simplyrecipes.com. We have no affiliation with them or whatnot, but it's just a good recipe site. But this is a great piece of content here because you know what? They didn't have to do this. They didn't have to say, break down all the minutia of hard boiling an egg and everything that everything that goes into it, and providing pictures and walkthroughs and content and all that. They didn't have to do that. They could have just provided another great recipe and said, it requires hard-boiled eggs, figure it out. But this is a great piece of content. And as you can see, there's a lot of ads. So kind of conversion opportunities or ways for them to make ad revenue from clicking on the ads. But so it's kind of top of the funnel, but also there's a lot of bottom of the funnel opportunities there. So this is one but it's also, think about this too. This is easy in a lot of ways. This is taking something that is a very simple question. How do I boil an egg? It's a simple question, and it's answering it thoroughly with step-by-step instructions that's accessible to the average viewer. And I think that as far as resource allocation, this is really good. Has a really high ROI because they write this one article years ago. I don't know when this was actually first written, but I believe it's been up for several years. Correct me if I'm wrong. But so you write one piece of content, maybe 800 words with a couple pictures, and this can live on into perpetuity, earning you links and earning you traffic and earning you conversions and page views. And so it's something that the ROI on it is just staggering.
Yeah. I also love, you scroll up to the top of the article, they've got internal links to their other recipes on their site. I mean,
absolutely.
What kind of message would that send if they mention deviled eggs and egg salad, and yet they don't think that their egg salad or deviled eggs are good enough to link to within their own site? So again, that's one of those things. They're telling Google, like, hey, we have these two, and these are great recipes that relate to this. So they link to it to show that those are important and valuable parts of their site as well.
Absolutely. So this next one here, kind of talking about cars and tires on the brain. This is a great linkable asset from Bridgestone, Bridgestone tires here, and it's and this is a lot less promotional, so I like this one. So there's not ad heavy, and it's not promoting an ad, not promoting a sale or anything like that. It has a little bit here down at the bottom, continue your journey. So it's a very kind of an elegant transition to possibly buying something from them, but the entire thing, there's not even a lot of links in here, if any at all. I don't see any, but it is very informative. And actually, how to change a tire, how to change a flat tire, this is actually one of the top search results for that query. So then it's definitely dominating for that. But it's something that, again, is a great linkable asset that's earning them page views, earning them links, and earning them equity into perpetuity. So I really enjoy this one, and I think it's a great example here. This did probably take a lot of time, but again, it's something that is it's earning equity all the while.
Yeah, one thing I would say about it as well is just, again, like going back and with link building, always think about your users and think about real people. And it's so easy for Bridgestone to just be like, we sell tires, let's just use our site to sell tires. Instead, they think about their audience, they think about the questions that they ask and the challenges that they face, and you're like, oh, if you are selling tires, people need to change tires sometimes. We should show them how to do that. And that's questions that people ask. And so they thought about their users, they thought about the people who buy their products, and they wrote content for them.
And one thing too, and I think it's Movoto.com. I can't remember who it's a real estate site. It's a real estate site, and they do really great things, and they do really great entertaining blogs that earn a lot of links. So kind of talking about understanding your audience is like, Bridgestone, they have this, kind of a standard, like, oh, okay, here's how you change a tire. This is informative. This is good. Another thing that they could do, which would earn at least some links, maybe not as many as this, is like they could go through popular movies. Fast and the Furious 8 comes to mind, and they could talk about, hey, what tires were in these different action movies, and like what famous cars, and their tires, were featured in certain classic films, and like films by the tires, and maybe even go. And I'm just spitballing here. Maybe I should be billing them, but but what if they did? How many Academy Awards have certain tires won? Right, and like if certain tires been in certain Academy Award-winning movies, then you could say that this tire has won more Academy Awards than any other. So something that's kind of entertaining and informative, but also fun.
One of my favorite examples of that is, I think it's Homes.com. They have a resource that shows you the actual layout floor plans of your favorite houses from TV shows and
Oh,
movies. So it shows you
that's
they
great.
actually build out the house and show you what that floor plan would look like. That is such a cool, like, entertaining asset that like would be really fun to link to, I think. So.
I love that, and it's just like, you know, if I'm a website owner, I would want to link to that. I think that'd be fun, and I want to tell my audience about that too. Here's another one here. It's kind of more of a blog post, but it's, you know, kind of informative. But this is the famous CDC Preparedness 101 Zombie Apocalypse article from actually almost 5 years ago exactly, May 2011.
We chose this day for this webinar on purpose.
We absolutely
did.
Absolutely did. I was like, when is that? When is the 5th anniversary of that article? We have to do a webinar then. And so one thing here. So this is something that really is so successful because they understood that the CDC's survival preparedness articles that they had been doing are boring, right? You know, oh, make sure you have a flashlight and extra batteries and a radio and get some water and all that, and, you know, read a book, you know, if disaster strikes, entertain your family with the book. And, you know, that's great. Okay, that article can be written 1,000 times. But if you want to put a spin on it and say, here's what the CDC recommends if there's ever a zombie apocalypse, or in parentheses, any other type of emergency situation like a hurricane that's more realistic, here's what you do. And they totally nailed it. And this is something that 5 years ago, like when I was preparing for this webinar, I was like, oh my gosh, I've been thinking about this article ever since. They did such a good job. And so they really understood the audience, and they understood the content. They understood that people don't want to necessarily just read another, you know, preparedness article, but they want to, you know, they want something that is very shareable and fun, but also as informative as well. And I thought this is just they just did a really good job. So, yeah. Yeah, any thoughts on that one?
No, just a great example of thinking outside the box. Like you said, nobody wants to read another emergency bulletin from a government agency. They want to read something that's fun and culturally relevant, and they went ahead and did that. And it's like, that's really cool that they bust that out.
And again, it's just that the ROI on that is really, they just do a little, someone has the idea of like, wait a minute, let's spin this so that it's talking about a zombie apocalypse, and that, you know, that's kind of popular, it's trending right now, and let's just kind of do this, try that out. And it's just really good, so I embrace that. This last one is Helpline.com, and this one here, there's so many good resources on this site, but one of the things that really kind of stood out to me as a great linkable asset is their pill identifier. And this I hadn't really seen before, and I think this is a really unique linkable asset, and it's something that could save a life. You know, kind of like the tire, you know, kind of like changing a tire could, you know, if you don't know how to change a tire, you could put yourself in danger and your family in danger. It's the same thing. It's like if, I don't know, if there's a pill in your cabinet, you don't recognize it, or if, you know, you're taking care of your, you know, an elderly family member, or a child comes across a pill, you don't know what it is, this will kind of help you make a safe decision as far as kind of where, you know, how to, you know, possibly how to maybe take or administer the pill, or even, you know, make a choice of disposing of it and, you know, getting it out of the way. And so I think this is something that it's very, you know, not necessarily, this is almost on the opposite end of the spectrum of like the zombie article. This is like, okay, a lot of time and money is going to go into this. This isn't just going to be a blog article that with a creative title. This is going to be a huge endeavor that has to be kept up to date, because if it's not accurate, people could die. Mm-hmm. And so this is a linkable asset. But also, I think the value goes up too exponentially, because it's like, if I'm the CDC, I'm probably, you know, I would probably link to this, you know, this pill identifier thing, you know, to kind of help people make important health decisions. You know, I could see the Mayo Clinic linking to this. I could see all these amazing high value sites linking to this and saying like, oh my gosh, here's a great resource to help you make, you know, safe decisions for your family.
I mean, talk about uniquely valuable. I mean,
yeah.
It's unique. I mean, I don't think anybody else has this, and on top, it really does serve a purpose. So, I mean, that's a great linkable asset.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that. I thought that was a very good one. Good one to look at. So excellent. So let's go back here. I want to check out some questions here that we had. Let's go ahead and see. Looks like we had a good. Well, we had a question here. Someone asking. Yeah, very good, from Joshua. Kind of talking about, commenting on, real human beings versus bots. Bots are kind of things like that. Joshua, that's a really good kind of comment there, because your content. If I'm a link builder, and I am, I don't just play one on TV. If I'm a link builder, I want to share and spread the word about content that's valuable to humans, to people, not just Googlebot, not just not just so that the HTML looks good and it's optimized for crawling and indexing and all that. That's almost secondary, but it's definitely kind of part of it. But I want to make sure that my content is actually valuable to human beings, and not just search engines.
Well, I think, what's the purpose of the Google bot? Like, what's the purpose of the whole Google algorithm? And that's to return the best searches possible, the most relevant searches possible, to find out what the meaning of that person's query was. And so, if you're doing things that are good for humans, that are good for the users of the site, then there's a good chance what you're doing is going to be good for the bots as well. And I think there's ways to cater to the bot, but ultimately you want to make sure that you're putting a user experience first with your link building.
Absolutely. I just want to get to the Q&A slide here. Just kind of have that pulled up here. So, and Devin writes in, what is a good number of backlinks to determine a piece of linkable asset is a success? That question is an interesting one. So here's what I'd say. I would say between 0 and 1 to upwards of millions. I really think so. Why do I say 0? Besides 0 links to it besides the internal links. So assuming it's linked to internally, that's good. But outside, assuming we're talking about external links. So if somebody just mentions my piece on social media, or they or maybe even they share it on a blog post, but they don't write a link to it, but they just say, hey, check, there's a CDC article that talks about this. This is great. As long as people are sharing my content, social media link or anything like that, it's not a direct website link, then I'm happy. I don't necessarily have to have a social, have a external link pointing to it. But any external link pointing to it, any external link that you build is a success. And so I'd say the sky's the limit. But it's important to kind of make sure that your content is driving conversation.
Yeah, I would also agree with in terms of like what makes, if you think about like a huge company, like if Best Buy makes a great asset, they're probably going to get thousands of links, tons of links to that. If you're a local dentist, you're probably going to have a hard time getting millions of people to link. So it just kind of depends on the size of your business, your website, what your audience is like there. It just, but if you're making things that are of value and people are mentioning it and linking to it, then that's a good sign. And if people are mentioning it and not linking to it, then definitely use a mentions tool and track those down and reach out to them to convert those as well.
That's a great thing too. And also that kind of the integration of those tools, tools for kind of seeing where those discussion points are happening. I think is like a mentioning tool. Google Alert. Set up a Google Alert for some of your assets or your blog articles, or for your website, is really good. Joshua writes in too. He shows us the linkable asset that we shared about the hard-boiled eggs has 468 referring domains. Not too shabby.
Not too bad.
Not too shabby, and it's basically a number 1 or 2 result on Google. So for that query, so
and that's just one page.
So that's all right.
That's just one page of their site of like thousands of recipes and resources they have. I mean, just imagine if you're making great content like that. That's not a bad haul.
And I would love to see the search volume, right, for that query, and see how many people that number 2 result is, that's driving. How many people per month is being driven to that website, to that piece of content each month? I mean, for that one, that person deserves a raise. They wrote that one blog article that has 468 referring domains pointing to it. That's the number 2 search result for that query, and is probably driving so much passive traffic there. So yeah, it's just lovely. So linkable assets, pretty valuable. Pretty valuable. Talk about passive income. that's a really good way to kind of get out ahead of that and earn that. Excellent. Well, I want to just thank everybody for all the people that sent their websites in. I really appreciate that, so that we can look at those, evaluate those on air. And thank you for your questions and answers today. I want to do a quick poll question here before we get to our parting thoughts. I want to do, let's see, there's the poll question page. Just want to do a quick poll question here. So the poll question today is, would you like to know more about Page One Power's services? Would you like to know more about what Page One Power can do for you? And that's one thing that Michael has a lot of experience with here as well, is kind of helping connect people with our products and services. So there's a we'll just take a few more moments here while the poll is open, and please answer, and then we will move on to our parting.
Your price for clicking yes is you get to talk to me. I mean,
there you go.
On, right?
There you go. Can I click myself? Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody. So I'll just go ahead and close that poll there. Excellent. All right. Well, Michael, it's time for our parting thoughts. So linkable assets. We had a good conversation just talking about what is a linkable asset. We looked at some live examples of great linkable assets. We had some questions on the air. What are your parting thoughts?
My parting thoughts are, this is my maiden voyage on a P1P webinar, and it was a pleasure. It was great. I mean, the thing to really focus on and think about with your linkable assets is those are your tools for link building. Imagine, mining for gold, and you send someone out there to do that. If you don't have tools to do that with, you're going to come back with nothing or just a couple of rocks or something. That's what your links will look like if you don't have those linkable assets. So have those tools available. That will open up a whole new world of opportunities. And when you do that, focus on users, build content that solves their problems and provides value to them, and you'll be able to build links back to that.
Excellent parting thought. My parting thought too is to just really think about the things that you like to enjoy, like as a consumer of media and as a consumer on the web. What are things you like to read and you like to explore online? And if you're a business owner and you're trying to build links, recreate that for your audience and for your clients. And that's a really good place to kind of start. And as far as building those linkable assets, and don't be afraid to take risks, because it's really hard to get it right the first time. And if you got it right the first time, that would be amazing, and I would congratulate you. But I would also be very surprised, because it's a lot of work. Like Matt Cutts says that it's link building is basically the ditch digging of SEO, and it's hard work. He says that because it's hard work. So sweat plus creativity. So that's our parting thoughts. I want to thank you so much for joining us today. This has been another edition of the Page One Power Panel Discussion Series. We are happy you could join us today. Recordings will be available on our website and on our YouTube channel shortly after this broadcast, along with all of our past webinars. Keep an eye out for more exciting webinars in the future from Page One Power, and remember, link unto others as they would link unto you.